Chronicle of the Times, the highly disturbing case of the Reverend Wetherell, scandals of the past. Welcome to Chronicle of the Times. In today's episode, we take a look at a major scandal of 1845 involving the Reverend Mr. Wetherell, his daughter, and the new husband of his daughter. Oxford educated the Reverend Mr. Wetherell in his youth was fortunate to marry very well. The couple had a daughter before the wife sadly passed, leaving her significant inheritance to her daughter. Years pass. The Reverend Mr. Wetherell has expensive tastes. His daughter comes into her inheritance, and with his daughter's permission, the Reverend Mr. Wetherell burns through the inheritance in only a few years. The daughter, against her father's wishes, finds a respectable man who has just become an attorney. The new husband is shocked and dismayed to find that serious debts in the name of the purportedly wealthy young woman he has married are now laid at his door. As he attempts to understand just what he has gotten himself into, a highly torrid and salacious story emerges regarding the Reverend Mr. Wetherell and his daughter. We explore the very disturbing, scandalous case of the Reverend Mr. Wetherell from 1845 in today's episode of Scandals of the Past. For scandal and history enthusiasts, we briefly recount a similar story that occurs in Stepney some 15 years later, and under our end of episode segments of further particulars. We hope that you enjoy the show. From the Illustrated Police News, the 22nd of November, the Reverend C. Wetherell. The infamous case of Cooke versus Wetherell was a case of alleged incest, and one of so revolting a character that one would prefer to pass it over in silence and let it sink into oblivion, were it not for the fact that it is a crime of not uncommon occurrence, which is frequently engendered by the covetousness of the age. The delinquent in this case had neither the excuse of poverty nor the circumstance arising from the overcrowding and indiscriminate herding of the sexes together. On the contrary, he was a man of education and of wealth, and a minister of the Church of England, who ought, by his example and his call to a purity of living, to have been not only a protector to his own child, but to all around him. The Reverend C. Wetherell, who was born in the year 1790, was educated at Oxford and afterwards became a clerk in holy orders. In early life he came to reside in London, and being highly respectably connected, he married a daughter of the then Lord Mayor of London. Through his father-in-law's influence he obtained the rectory of Byfield in Northamptonshire, and he also had with his wife a fortune of £20,000, worth approximately £2,100,000 in 2024, the use of which, however, was vested in her for life. In the year 1819, a daughter was born of the marriage, but her mother dying before she came of age, she willed the whole of her property to her. When the daughter was 22 years of age, she became acquainted with a Mr. John Mind Cooke, a young man, an attorney, and also very respectably connected, the son of Mr. Cooke of Capel Court in Hertfordshire. As her father objected to the proposed marriage, the young people were in opposition to his wishes, and they privately married at St. George's Church in Hanover Square in 1842. Mr. Cooke expected a large fortune with his wife, but shortly after their return from their wedding tour, a series of circumstances arose which led to the revelations in the trial annexed. The action came on at Croydon on the 15th of August 1845 before Lord Chief Justice Tyndall and a common jury. The case was one of the most extraordinary on record, and the damages were laid at £50,000, worth approximately £7,600,000 in 2024. Mr. Sergeant Shee opened the case and said that the plaintiff, Mr. Cooke, was a young man who came into court to complain of the most serious injury that could be inflicted by one man against the other, an injury which had embittered the early mornings of his life, which must deprive him of happiness thereafter. The defendant, the Reverend C. Wetherell, was a man of 55 years of age, and at the present time rector of Byfield, and when he told them that he was charged with incest and adultery with his own daughter, he was sure the jury would give him credit for feeling the deep responsibility of his task in having to lay such a case before them. At the death of the defendant, the Reverend Wetherell's wife, the young lady's fortune settled on her by her mother was vested for her in the hands of a trustee till she became of age. But when she became of age, it was transferred to her in her own name and to be used in her own right. Her father, the Reverend Wetherell, at this time took a splendid mansion in Eaton Square, where he lived in a style of great splendour and far above his means. It would appear that the young lady's money was, with her consent, by degrees drawn from the Bank of England, and eventually all squandered away within 2 years of the young lady's coming of age. About this time, in the year 1842, when her money was all gone, she got married to the plaintiff, Mr. Cooke, who had just been admitted as an attorney and had his own right a fortune of £8,000, the value of £1,100,000 in 2024. After the return from their wedding tour, the young couple went to visit the Reverend Mr. Wetherell at his rectory at Byfield, where Mr. Cooke was then more friendlily received. In 1842, the legal owner of the woman, the father or the husband, was liable for the woman's debts. So, Mr. Cooke, who thought he was marrying a wealthy heiress, has found himself with large debts incurred. It would seem that whilst she was under her father's care, the Reverend Wetherell had bought on credit and utterly depleted her inheritance, all with the complicity of his daughter, who had signed for the purchases against her inheritance. Basically, they bought on credit with the daughter's inheritance as assurance. To add to this, before the legal marriage took place, the Reverend Wetherell, again with the agreement and complicity of his daughter, further bought on credit, which, when payment was due, was now sent to the daughter's new husband, Mr. Cooke. Mr. Cooke would be responsible for the debts that had been incurred by the Reverend Wetherell through Wetherell's daughter, the new Mrs. Cooke. Support history that doesn't behave. Join us on Patreon for daily episodes, no ads, and enough 19th century oddities to fuel your next dinner party. It's £5 a month, and unlike a pint, won't leave you questioning your choices. News of the time, historical crime at patreon.com.